Back at it, Paul George finally back at playing a high level of basketball. As Indiana Pacers have several issues on hand. Dan, didn't you say that the Indiana Pacers would sweep the Atlanta Hawks last week on the show?
I did call the sweep
Yes.
for the Pacers. I said this is exactly what they needed to get themselves rolling again.
Yes.
But I was absolutely shocked that Atlanta took game one. They were competitive in game two as well. And now Indiana's just got this thing going. Is the coach on his last legs? And is there turmoil in the locker room? Was there a fight between Evan Turner and Lance Stevenson? Everything's falling apart there.
They needed this because the last, 2 months of the season, these guys fell asleep.
Well, to me, they needed it probably a month ago because when you're trying to get that jolt in the playoffs, that jolt of a loss, it can be too late at times. Atlanta, as much as we can see what's going on with the Pacers or not see in terms of their struggles, you don't think another team smells that, jumps on that? That's what Atlanta's doing.
And word is out, too. Evan Turner, Lance Stevenson getting to throw blows in practice. It's not a good time for the Pacers. Is this group now tough enough to kind of not only get past the Hawks, who have Jeff Teague balling out of control, but to regroup and refocus in order to get to where they want to be, which is a Game 7 against Miami in Indiana?
Well, the leader's got to step up now.
And who's that leader, though? I'm confused as to who the leader of this team is. Because sometimes I think it's David West.
Right.
And sometimes I think it's Roy Hibbert. I never think
it
it's
ain't
Paul
Roy
George.
It's not Roy Hibbert these days.
I never think it's Paul George.
Yeah. Well, it has been West, traditionally. But now I think since they've lost their way. No, you're right. Now that I think they've lost their way, they're looking for that because West, I agree with Dan. He shouldn't have been that number one leader guy. Even though he's a voice in the locker room, you got to sometimes put it on your best player.
But Paul George isn't old enough. Is he old enough? Is he experienced enough?
I think he is.
Absolutely he is. I don't think that should happen. He's their all-star. He should be their leader. But if I'm the Pacers, getting past Atlanta is one thing right now. If they have the Wizards now, looking at what's happening,
Dude, they can't even look that far, though.
They're not going to get to Miami. They're not going to get to a Game 7.
They need swagger.
They need swagger. They do not have that swagger. Maybe Game 2 gives them a little bit of that swagger, but they need that swagger back because that's what they had when they were dangerous.
I want to touch on the point you guys just made. So you're talking about leadership, and maybe Paul George can be that leader. But the stuff that's happening to Paul George off court, how can you trust a guy like that to be your leader when he's getting in as much trouble? He's not really managing his time away from basketball very well then. So is that going to be your leader?
When the chips are down and you're on the court and you're playing the game, you got to have faith that this guy can lead. You can't worry about those kinds of distractions when the game is being played.
And Lance Stevens, to me, you talk about are they tough enough? A lot's been made of his attitude, how he gets under people's skin, both teammates and enemies alike. But, he is a tough guy. And I think that could be contagious if they corral it in the right way. You talk about the fight or whatever it was, but they've got to rally around something. And you talk about Hibbert's problems. You talk about, Paul George's problems. Why not rally around that? I mean, that's the most viable thing.
I agree, man. At least it shows some passion.
All right, as we proceed to give you what you need, let's jump to another series. The Indiana Pacers, of course, lost home court advantage. So did every other team in the playoffs except for the Miami Heat. The Heat maintained home court advantage. But here's my takeaway from this series, first off. Did anyone think Al Jefferson would make this group that much better? I knew Al Jefferson was a good player. But seriously, though, he's become... I'm going to put him in the lane of Joakim Noah as one of those constant professional locker room leader types. Old school. Yeah. Plus, he's got the game to back up.
I think that's kind of what throws people off. In this new age NBA, where it's a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism, Al Jefferson gives you that different look, that 80s look. And so it can cause you to struggle sometimes when you're not used to playing that style of play. But, to see what he's done, I know they're down, but to see what he's done with that team, both getting them to the playoffs and his performances, he's their MVP right now.
Nabil, I've been impressed with what I've seen from these guys. They keep the games close against Miami, and I didn't think that would happen. Do they steal a game?
They might get one, but it's a mental game now, right? You're down 2-0 to the Heat.
You're going home.
Yeah, you're going home, but at the end of the day, you really don't have much. And Al Jefferson, if he's still injured, he's playing on that sore foot. I mean,
okay, let's look at the tape right now because I got a little beef with the refs, and this is always a concern for us in the playoffs. LeBron James. Okay, first off, Josh McRoberts looks like he just got off his motorcycle, just walked into the building and decided, I'm going to chop the nicest guy in the court. That's a straight-up elbow to the jibs, okay? That should have been a flagrant foul. It was not called a flagrant. Josh McRoberts stayed in the game. Do you have a problem with this, Dan Glavine?
Well,
is that a hard foul?
Yeah, it's a hard foul, and maybe a flagrant should have been called.
Maybe.
Probably.
Probably.
I've seen calls for less.
It was above the neck, straight-up elbow.
He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing.
Okay.
He knew what he was doing, even though he said he didn't. But
he got away with it.
He got away with it, and that's playoffs. And people will say, well, that's dirty. That's not basketball in the playoffs or regular season. But when you're the Bobcats and you're playing the Miami
anything you
Heat,
can.
You're at a point where you're trying to do whatever you can. And if you lose Bob, in the effort to make a stand, then you lose Bob.
When you see LeBron James coming down the lane and you have a chance to go at him, you hurt him.
Okay.
You have to. You have to take shots.
And LeBron
Nice
didn't even
hockey
fall.
attitude.
Yeah, I know.
Look, he's
It's hard
to
to make that guy fall. Listen, sticking with the theme of refs, Chicago, Washington. Game 2. I'm upset. Most Chicago Bulls fans are upset. Taj Gibson has been robbed by these refs repeatedly, and we're going to show you what we're talking about. Now, I'm surprised that the Bulls are down to a young team. A lot of Raptors fans wanted to see the Toronto Raptors play these Washington Wizards because it would have maybe worked matchup-wise. It's not working for the Chicago Bulls. It's been a tough series. Kirk Hinrich is the only guy I know who will take his glasses off to fight. He's taking them off the fight. Joakim Noah's getting the crowd hyped, the defensive player of the year. But let's talk about there were some key calls missed by the referees in this game that cost the Chicago Bulls opportunities down the stretch. If you look here, Taj Gibson, loose ball. He claims he called timeout 3 times, looking at Joey Crawford straight in the face, and says that Joey Crawford refused to call it, calls a jump ball.
Okay, let me ask you this. If that cost them...
Before you make that, look at this. Nene holds Taj Gibson's arm on the jump ball, and Joey Crawford still didn't make the call. Now defend Joey Crawford.
Why do they only have 91 points at the end of 4 quarters? That is
because Derrick Rose is injured and
can't
Luol
score,
Deng
man.
got traded.
they should find a way to generate more offense. That's what the Bulls' problem is. It's not with the calls that the referees are making. If you go through the tape of the entire game, I'm sure there's calls that go both ways 50-50. The Bulls can't
Those
score.
were bad calls,
The
Dan. You
Bulls
can't
can't
defend it.
score,
Those
and
are
that's
bad
why
calls.
they're losing
That
the
is
series.
no,
They can't
They
score.
play good defense, and that's why they're in the series. And if those calls didn't go against them, they would have been in the
They've
game.
been struggling to find that scoring all year, so they should be used to that.
That's their
now.
identity.
So you come in, that's what they're made of. You know, Taj Gibson should be mad. He's a potential 6th Man of the Year guy. So in terms of respect, if you want to call respect to the refs, you know, you figure he gets something like that. And he also said Augustine was trying to call the timeout too. So there was all kinds of action going on. But
Hey, listen.
I don't blame referees.
All right.
when you're struggling.
I'm going to call a timeout right now because we're having some fun right now here on the Hangout, chopping up and breaking down your favorite basketball topics. We will be back to break it down more on the other side of the break. We got to head out west and talk about the Clippers, Nuggets, all that good stuff when we return on the Hangout.